We are back. Can you believe it?
We're continuing on because we got into a dialogue and there's a major thunderstorm and we don't want to go outside.
But really, chapter. I want you all to flip a page over. We're going on to chapter 17.
The same portion.
And this is fantastic stuff. It really is.
All right. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to Aaron and to his sons and to all the sons of Israel, and say to them, This is what the Lord has commanded, saying, Any man from the house of Israel who slaughters an ox, a lamb, or a goat in the camp, or who slaughters it outside the camp, and has not brought it to the doorway of the tent of meeting to present it as an offering to the Lord before the tabernacle of the Lord, blood guiltness is to be reckoned to that man."
Yes.
Basically, we're laying down a thing now that says any sacrifice has to occur here.
That's right.
Because at this point, they were, you know, we saw that numerous beforehand. You saw all sorts of different sacrifices happening.
Now,
you know,
with where you're going, I believe I know where you're going in this regard. There are laws that are given to the people while they dwell in the wilderness, and then God amends these particular laws when they come into the land because of proximity to the temple. But they still had to treat the blood a certain way.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll come into that. I think it's, now it's my memory. I think it's Deuteronomy chapter 12 where God amends the law for when they come into the land as to how they're to treat the blood.
He references it again, everything. But he also states...
But the essence of this doesn't change.
No.
You know...
Not at all.
Yeah.
The reason, I love it, verse 5, the reason is so that the sons of Israel may bring their sacrifices, which they were sacrificing in the open field, that they may bring them into the Lord at the doorway of the tent of meeting to the priest, and sacrifice them as sacrifices of peace offerings to the Lord. Okay, so these are... not sin offerings here, these are the ones, whatever, but specifically as peace offerings to the Lord.
It's to be counted as a peace offering because this animal is killed in the field. This is for food. This is not a cleansing ceremony, a ritual. No. This is just for your meal. You know.
Yeah, and then ultimately it'll have defining things.
Yeah, there's
for the Levites,
no, if you will. Ceremonial cleansing in order to draw near to the Lord or anything.
It comes to the thing very nicely. The priest shall sprinkle the blood on the altar of the Lord at the doorway of the tent of meeting and offer up the fat and the smoke as a soothing aroma to the Lord. And they shall no longer sacrifice their sacrifices to, look at this, verse 7. They shall no longer sacrifice their sacrifices to the goat demons with which they play the harlot. This shall be a permanent statute to them throughout their generations. And any man from the house of Israel or from the aliens who sojourn among them who offers a burnt offering or sacrifice and does not bring it to the doorway of the tent of meeting to offer to the Lord, that man shall be cut off from his people. All right?
And actually it says that twice.
Yes, it does.
It says it in... let's see, I think it's in verse 4. In verse 4, at the very end.
The man shall be cut off from among his people. Now, basically we're relegating any sacrifice, anything that was going on outside. And it's literally being considered idolatry at that point.
Yes.
If you were to do it outside of the... And you could even be sacrificing unto the Lord, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And it would be considered idolatry.
Yes.
Why? Because you're not being obedient what the Lord has instructed to do.
Yeah. Now, a little explanation might be needed. Where are the people coming from? They're coming from Egypt.
Yes, they just came out
which is an idol worshiping.
Oh, yep.
You know, and in the book of Jeremiah, they recognize that there's several places that recognize that the Israelite people worshipped idols when they were in Egypt.
Yeah, they started practicing.
Very little about their their God. They knew a whole lot about the Egyptian gods.
Definitely,
but they knew very little about...
Definitely did. There were still remnants within that were still instructional, and et cetera, on how...
And then where are they going? They're going to the land of Canaan.
Oh, yeah. Which is
and they have the same problem that the Egyptians have.
Mm-hmm.
So this demon, it's interesting. When you click on this is a very specific demon. It's just not any old demon like, casting out the demons, demoniac, or anything.
Oh, yeah.
This is a very specific demon. This is the goat demon. Mm-hmm. This is the goat god. And if you click on that, it means the hairy one.
Uh-huh.
Or
the
goat.
Same way as even the word Esau and the mountain Seir, etc. It's all tied together.
It's tied together, and it's in reference to the goat god. And in Egypt, he was called Menendez.
Oh, yeah.
The Greeks call him Pan.
Yeah.
Pan.
Yes.
The god Pan. And, we have imagery of the devil, and all that. This is where we get that imagery from.
Starting from there with Pan.
The goat god Pan, with the goat face and the huge horns, and he's standing upright and all that.
Well, he's standing upright. He basically had the lower portions of a goat, and then the upper portion of a man, but having ears, etc.
With the horns and all that.
Right.
This is where we get that imagery from. Yep. And so God says, I know you did worship those demons. Mm-hmm. He's saying you aren't going to now.
And the real part is that specifically that the idolatry, how sometimes it's a worthless idol, it's a piece of wood, etc., it's a stone thing, whatever. Those physical elements were, but behind that, the empowering part is demonic. Yeah.
Yes, it's purely demonic. So God is dealing with the blood, and being that they're in close proximity to the tabernacle, they were required, this is a requirement in the wilderness, that they had to bring it to the tabernacle to offer it to the Lord. And this really is God erecting a methodology for them to not go back into idol worship.
Right.
That's what this is all about.
And it's very specific, pointing to. In other words, they're bringing to, this is an imagery of Messiah also, because it's bringing it to one particular path.
Yes.
That you had to go through that particular doorway of the tent of meeting.
See, in meat, in blood, that's, I think, where you really want to get into the meat and the blood and the life being in the blood. There's a lot there. See, God is the one that imparts all life.
Correct.
And He doesn't want the life that He imparted to be going to these other places like Pan and a number of other gods as well that we'll be getting into later on down the road.
Finish reading 17 here from verse 10 on. It says, "And any man from the house of Israel, or from the aliens who sojourn among them."
The alien that sojourns among them.
Yeah.
You see?
Yes.
So this is a universally applicable...
"Who eats any blood, I will set my face against that person who eats blood." And
so first they're going to be cut off, kara, and then God's going to set His face against them. Yeah. This is pretty harsh for going deer hunting.
It's the element of improper slaughtering. Okay, in other words, because that's part of the thing of that draining. And then there's a very specific thing of because it says, "For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you on the altar to make atonement for your souls. For it is the blood by reason of the life that makes atonement." That phrase is very, very important. "For it is the blood by reason of the life that makes atonement. Therefore I said to the sons of Israel, no person among you may eat blood, nor may any alien who sojourns among you eat blood. So when any man from the sons of Israel or from the aliens who sojourn among you in hunting catches a beast or a bird, which may be eaten," that's important,
yeah,
"which may be eaten, If you recall back in
Yes.
Leviticus 11. Okay. He shall pour out its blood and do something to it. Cover it. There's the word here. It's cover it with earth. Okay? That word cover again shows up. For as for the life of all flesh, its blood is identified with its life. That's the way it translates there. Therefore I said to the sons of Israel, you are not to eat the blood of any flesh, for the life of all flesh is its blood. Whoever eats it shall be cut off. And when any person eats an animal which dies or is torn by a beast, whether he is native or an alien, he shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, remain unclean until evening. Then he will become clean. Now, understanding there? So when a person eats an animal which dies or is torn, he becomes unclean.
Yes.
Now, prior to, you have purposeful things, sacrifice, eating blood or whatever things, just totally eating blood, whatever, you're cut off. Here, you're just becoming unclean.
Well, that's just because you're eating the critter.
Yeah.
And incidentally...
But I'm just saying, though, that in other words, it's not a proper slaughter process that happens.
Yeah.
Because it says if the animal dies or is torn by a beast. And that particular word torn right here is important because that ends up referring to things later. It's a word trafe, is the tearing of things on that. Because this is fascinating. This passage through here of 16, 17, and 18 that we're not going to get into right now, but it deals with particular immoral relations, specifically such as fornication and various things on there. If you were to flip to Acts 15, you'll see James, the Lord's brother, he expounds on particular things. You got all these Gentiles coming into the faith, right? And the three specific things, sometimes counted as four, but very specifically in there he refers to, ends up going to literally the heart of Leviticus.
Yes, he does.
Very important, whatever. What are we going to make this applicable? How are we doing this thing? How are we handling? Do all the Gentiles coming into the faith, do they have to go through the process of becoming actually halakhically Jewish? In other words, by law, become Jewish. And he says, no.
No.
But here's what needs to be applied.
Yeah.
And the very things that he's saying applies come from the heart of Leviticus.
Yes, he does.
The heart of the Torah, right here in the middle of it.
And that's going to be a very big key when, like what you've said, when it comes to 18, 19, and 20, that application. But just to expound on this a little bit.
Go ahead. 'Cause I'm going to go to Acts 15 because I want to read that.
And I am going to go to Genesis chapter 9.
Yes. That's what you're looking for. Yes.
Because you're going to James is dealing with the Gentiles coming into the faith of Jesus Christ, not coming into Judaism, coming into faith of Jesus Christ. And here, God is speaking with Noah directly to Gentiles because there were no Jews yet. They didn't even exist, So, let's see. So this is what God says to Noah and his descendants, i.e. all Gentiles. All right? But you shall not eat flesh with its life. That's interesting because a lot of people can put the next statement and this statement together as just one, but really it's two statements. Just think about that. God actually has to find it necessary to say, by the way, don't eat an animal while it's alive. Can you imagine that? He goes, hey, just in case you don't know, don't eat an animal while it's alive. I used to think that was a joke. Who on God's green earth would ever do that? But one day I was watching a movie. I can't even remember what movie it was, but there was a table with holes cut in the table. I don't remember what movie. And
Indiana
they put
Jones, Crusade, something or other. Yeah, I think so, because they're like monkey.
And they put monkeys into these holes and cut their head open and started eating the brain while the monkey was alive. I was so disgusted by it, I turned it off. I've never seen the rest of that movie. I couldn't even remember what movie it was.
I just know that scene, too. I've heard of that.
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And people really actually do this, so. This is a command that was given by God to every living person that is ever to walk the face. Do not ever do this.
Yeah.
Holy cow. But anyhow, I digress and continue. Let's see. You shall not eat flesh with its life, comma, that is its blood, and your lifeblood will be required. A reckoning from every beast I will require. From every beast. What did Leviticus? You just read it. They said that he will be cut off. Korah can be either separated from the camp. It can also mean physically
gone,
executed, gone. You're done. I will require a reckoning from every beast, from a beast, not just from a human being, but from a beast. I will require it from man. From his fellow man, I will require reckoning for the life of man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, a man, his blood will be shed. God made man in his own image. But the point of this, it says, the life that is the blood. All right, going back to verse 4. And that same terminology is used in Leviticus, but when it says the life, it literally says the nephesh. The soul, the soul of the being is in the blood.
Yes.
And he counts it in Leviticus, and he counts it here. If not dealt with properly, he counts it equal to murder. Murder.
That phrase
is
with
murder.
The phrase where it talks about taking the earth and covering the blood, that is a phrase that is always then equated in other places with murder.
Yes. And where do we see that?
First time is Cain and Abel.
Cain and Abel.
Yeah, and it's covered. And then later in Hebrews we hear something crying out. The blood of Abel cries out to me from the earth.
Yes.
From the ground. So it's very interesting, but you're exactly right, though. It is equated with murder, which, interestingly, I had heard recently a teaching on this with regard to it was almost sounded like it could have been coming from a PETA group or something for the defense of animals.
But
Seriously.
Here's the thing about that in this regard. God cares about the life of every living creature that he created.
All creation,
Abuse of animals is unacceptable, and apparently, based off of this, it's not that the animals are created in the image of God.
No.
It's that God imparted his life into this animal, that he counts it very high on the Richter scale.
Absolutely,
and if you take that... and it's not done properly.
Right.
That's the thing. If it's not done properly, he accounts it to you as murder. Animal abuse is unacceptable ever.
Exactly right. Exactly right. It is. And biblically speaking, that's what. In fact, you have just numerous other statutes and various things of that nature. But of the preeminence of life. And so important. So that's why there's this huge emphasis with regard to of blood and the import on there, because that is the essence of life. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm moving over to Acts, where you're at now.
So some men came down. This is Acts 15:1. Came down from Judea and were teaching the brothers, unless you are circumcised according to the custom of Moses, you cannot be saved. So we're equating a particular process here with regard to coming into the fullness faith of the body. All right. And after Paul and Barnabas had no small dissension and debate with them, Paul and Barnabas said, hey, whoa. Some of our others were appointed to go up to Jerusalem to the apostles and the elders about this question, saying, all right, what are we going to do here? So being sent on their way by the church, they passed through both Phoenicia and Samaria, and describing in detail the conversion of the Gentiles, and brought great joy to all the brothers. When they came to Jerusalem, they were welcomed by the congregation there, the apostles, the elders, and they declared what God had done with them. But some believers who belonged to the party of the Prushim rose up, Pharisees, and said, it is necessary to circumcise them is important. They need to become halakhically Jewish within here in order to keep the Torah.
Now,
the law
these
of
are
Moses.
Christian Pharisees.
Right.
These are Christian, but they've also been indoctrinated in the Pharisaical order.
Certainly.
And they're having a hard time separating.
They're trying. They're working. No, exactly. They're trying to work through. They're not trying to force something in this way because now they're having to deal with it. Okay, what are we doing here? We're having the sojourners, the alien. We're having Gentiles now that are like, wait a minute, this is coming into the faith here. How is this going to work? So they're wrestling how to do it. So the apostles and the elders gathered together to consider the matter. All right, so they're literally gathering, and after there had been much debate, that would have been fascinating.
It would have been
to listen to the arguments and the thing of there, right? Peter stood up and said, "Brothers, you know that in the early days God made a choice among you that by my mouth the Gentiles should hear the word of the gospel and believe. And God, who knows the heart," very important phrase, "bore witness to them by giving them the Holy Spirit just as he did to us.
Yes.
And he made no distinction between us and them, having cleansed their hearts by faith. Now, therefore, why are you putting God to the test by placing a yoke on the neck of the disciples that neither our fathers nor we have been able to bear?" Now, a lot of times that passage right there, people equate things, oh, well, that's the law.
Yeah. That's not what is being referred to here.
No, it isn't. There's elements of it.
Yeah.
There's no negating that on there. But the yoke being placed upon them was the layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of a fencing that
That's
ended
called
up...
the takanot.
It's just... all of a sudden, you don't even recognize what the original
law is anymore.
Because it's like, well, so you avoid breaking this, we want to put a thing here, so you avoid here, and put another barrier of things.
And you can understand a certain reasonableness about wanting to put a fence around law.
And
so
Jesus
that you don't encroach.
He even pointed to some of these out and even says some of the things on there. You've heard it said or whatever that you should not... killed your neighbor, whatever that thing. He goes, I'm telling you, don't even hate him.
Yeah.
Because that can lead to it. So in other words, deal with the issue of hate before you get to the spot of murder.
Yeah. So there is a reasonableness about the fences around. But then it became where the yoke that was placed we were not able to bear it.
No.
And that's not the law of God. That was the law of man. That's called learn the word. It's called a takanot.
Now, therefore, you're putting God to the test, okay? Placing the disciples, neither our fathers nor been able to bear. But we believe that we will be saved through the grace of our Lord Jesus, just as they will. All right, very important word. The terms, though, we've got to make sure, because this is a whole entire study in itself, of using the word of saved and grace, etc. things, because there's a greater expansion, and it has to be understood within the context of the time period in which it's being spoken.
Yeah.
It really does.
We're going to actually reflect grace next week in the middle of what we're going to be talking about.
Oh, okay, good.
Because we're going to be able to divert back to Abraham.
Yeah.
And so... we'll be able to show that.
I love this next line.
Okay.
And the assembly fell silent. All right, everybody got real quiet. Because you can just imagine, it had to be like, going back and forth, and then it fell silent, and they listened to Barnabas and Paul as they related what signs and wonders God had done through them among the Gentiles. After they finished speaking, James, Jesus' brother, replied, "Brothers, listen to me. Simon Shimon has related how God first visited the Gentiles to take from them a people for his name. And with this, the words of the prophets agree, just as it is written, after this I will return, and I will rebuild the tent of David that has fallen. I will rebuild its ruins. I will restore it, that the remnant of mankind may seek the Lord, and all the Gentiles who are called by my name."
That's interesting.
Very important.
We don't have time for that.
Says the Lord who makes these things known from old. Therefore, so in other words, this is all something that was all prophesied beforehand. Everything is to be heading this way. Therefore, my judgment is that we should not trouble those of the Gentiles who turn to God, but should write to them to abstain from things polluted by idols. Basically, staying away from idolatry. Abstain from idolatry. From sexual immorality, We're going to start in that on chapter 18. And from what has been strangled, and from blood. See,
now that's interesting, the issue of strangled. For a long time, because, I don't kill, I eat steak, but I don't process it, I don't kill it, like, what would strangling have to do? Is it a release of hormones or that contaminates the meat?
Well, it's the passage that we just dealt with here. If you find an animal, whatever, that dies or is torn by a beast, because what's the standard way in which, like, a predator or whatever would it usually grabs them by the neck and strangles them. Okay, then it begins tearing at the thing or whatever. That's the word then ends up being trafe. And that's now, if you use the word in any Jewish context or whatever, somebody that's Jewish, whatever you said, that's trafe. All that refers to is something that is not edible. In other words, you can't eat it because it wasn't properly slaughtered.
Well, we'll get to that. I think that's in Deuteronomy 12.
14.
Or 14. When
Leviticus 11 and 14.
When an animal is improperly killed,
right,
even though it's kosher,
or even though it's a clean, considered an animal that's edible, in other words, it's food,
they can't eat it because it died improperly.
Correct.
And what are you to do? Well, you give it to me.
Which therein lies an oddity to me on that, because it's like, well, wait a minute.
But the strangled, what I came to understand in digging into this, because I didn't understand really the issue. When you strangle an animal versus if an animal's torn, it's still going to bleed out.
It can.
But if it's strangled, the blood will coagulate within the meat, and the blood never gets to drain out. So you are literally eating the blood because it coagulated in place. Because the animal died, the heart quit beating, and it quits, and so there is no opportunity for it to drain out.
Right.
So strangulation, you are automatically eating the blood.
Yes. This combination of phrase here, though, this is the thing real important, because a lot of times it gets looked at and says, oh, it's these specific things. So, well, this hardly applies. No, it's speaking of the heart of Leviticus.
Yes.
It literally is.
And we're going to that next week.
Because they abstain from these things of idolatry, of sexual immorality, all right? And this is what's all we're getting ready to go into this whole next portion through here. It's going to hit in strong and heavy of defining that, okay? And from these elements, and the thing of a combination of strangled and blood, in the context of who's communicating this stuff on there, all those folks in there says, basically, are you ready?
Okay.
It's basically saying, it says, don't put the rest of it. They don't have to go through circumcision. But it's going to put upon them the element that says it's important to basically eat according to biblical standards.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people like to say, well, that's all that was put on. So but if they just read just a wee little bit further,
the motor from ancient generations. Verse 21 here, ancient generation. Moses has had in every city those who proclaim him, for he is read every Sabbath in the synagogues. Now, what is being stated there? Moses has been, it's the Torah. It's being taught.
That's Torah. He says, these are the immediate issues we're going to take care of right now, because they have to be addressed immediately, and the rest they'll learn in the synagogue.
Exactly.
Congratulations, but nobody ever reads verse 21.
It's the purpose, whatever is that. As they come into the faith, you're to learn Torah.
Yes.
You are. And what's the purpose of that? To lead you further of understanding how to walk this life out in relationship with Messiah and becoming more like Him.
Which goes right back to Luke 24. God revealing Himself to His disciples in the Torah and in the prophets, all of these things that were in reference to Him.
Pointing to Him.
You see, which is what it's for.
Yeah, that's the whole element of the Torah. Why it was written is
and it also answers why we ask the question all the time, what is it?
Yes.
Because we're constantly exploring, trying to find Him.
Yes.
It's a hide and seek game, if you will.
It's a great game.
It is. And it's fun, too.
Yes, it is.
But anyhow.
It seemed good to the apostles and the elders and the whole congregation to choose men from among them. The Antioch, Paul and Barnabas sent them, but okay, we're going to make this happen. So they wrote the whole letter, sent that with him. Okay, this is what you're going to communicate to him. And the thing is, though, it's not just these little items on there. It is significance with regard to where they're supposed to come into. Is it denying God's grace? None whatsoever on this thing. No. Is it releasing people from the Torah? No. It's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
It is the exact opposite. It amazes me, that fact, because this is like Acts 15 is so much of the time that it's like, oh, we're free from the law. No, that's not the point in all of things. It's like, this one thing that blows my mind sometimes with folks, whatever, that are quote-unquote Christian, whatever, that literally teach, whatever, says, well, that's Old Testament, it's not applicable, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, and you're saying, I'm free from the law. You were never originally under it.
Yeah.
How can you be free from it?
Yeah.
Anyway.
It depends on what law you're talking about to begin. Are you a king? Are you a female?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Are you a male?
Yes.
Are you of the priestly order?
Are you a Levite? Are you oh, my gosh, yes.
So which law are you even talking about? And what burden did don't kill your neighbor... what kind of special burden did that place you under when you aren't supposed to kill somebody and not sleep with your neighbor's wife? I mean, are you really under some kind of special burden with these? Really? Huh?
Yes, you're under the burden to obey those is what the burden is. Yes, and it takes effort to do such.
It does. It actually does take effort.
It's in this beautiful partnership that Jesus has created for us to walk into by and empowered by His Spirit to be able to walk things out. But we have to engage in it.
Yes. And
it takes effort. It takes, by God's amazing grace, gives us strength to do such, whatever. But it takes our part.
So, Tom,
anyway,
would you say that these last couple verses here that you just got done reading not only resemble Leviticus in where we're at now and where we're going to be next week, but also the baseline statement that God told Noah? Do you see a consistency here going from Noah to Leviticus to Acts?
Certainly. Yeah, it threads all the way through.
So you think that consistency is there. So before Sinai, before Moses, before Abraham, it was. All the way up through Abraham to Mount Sinai, it is. And after the cross, it still is.
It still is.
That's amazing.
And it still is.
Wow.
Yes, fullness
all right.
and all in all.
Well, we will be back next week. We hope you tune in with us next week. It's going to be exciting next week, that's for sure.
That's the truth.
All right.
Blessings.